You're watching Life Report. Pro-life talk. Real-world answers. Life Report trains people to more effectively defend their pro-life beliefs while honestly examining the strengths and weaknesses of both sides. We're the show other pro-lifers may have warned you about. This is Life Report.
What do you mean we can't look weird before we start talking?
Liz says
we look
can't
weird,
look weird. Yeah, we just
all the time.
I get up in the morning. Oh well.
Well, you guys
Every
have
time we look in
accepted
the mirror,
it.
Bummer, still look weird.
Oh, that reminds me. Speaking, I one of the things that people my age are supposed to do is make a plan for their financial future. Right. Well, I met with some financial advisor, and he said, "So, Kyle, how do you see yourself in the next, 5 to 7 years?" And I was thinking,
Like
for a minute.
broke.
No. I thought much simpler. Usually in a mirror.
Oh, come on.
Oh,
But,
my gosh. No, I think that deserves the crickets. That's just painfully bad. Did you actually say that to someone?
I did.
Shocking.
Where do you see? No, in 5 or 7 years, we're going to be seeing ourselves in totally new ways. The mirror is going to be old school.
Thank you. Okay, at least mine got
What's wrong with you guys?
Mine got
Seriously.
We obviously need a new opener.
Mine got a guffaw, a snort of dry entertainment at me and not what I said, but yours got dead air.
Yeah, it did. That's so just really.
All right, I'm gonna
We need to
leave the
record in the
show.
morning. We
and
need
you
to go
guys
to the
can
morning
continue.
thing because we're recording at the end of the day. It does not work.
And on a Friday for those.
Well, I don't have a
know.
problem. I'm happy because we're not
Okay.
recording on a
All
Saturday.
Right. All right. Josh says he has good
Okay.
news.
Okay. This was I got a really cool story for us to talk about today.
All right.
I've said it often, at least when I do live events. I don't know if I said it often on the podcast, but I know a lot of live events. It seems like during Q&A, I mention this a lot. You don't see a lot of people when we are out talking to people, doing pro-life stuff, or even speeches. You don't see often pro-choice people become pro-life in a day, or whatever.
Or if you're me, you've never seen it.
Aww.
Thank you.
I've seen it since I was 18. I've been doing this pretty much full time since I was 18. I've seen it up until last month 4 times. 2
Wow.
times during a speech. Like after a speech, someone comes up and says, "Wow, I was pro-choice and now I'm pro-life." And then 2 conversations on college campuses, and you're talking. Both of those were 60 to 90 minute conversations.
Right.
Really taking lots of time to talk about all the it's not usually one chart at the top, like boom, I'm pro-life, and that kind of thing. and the reason I tell people, because a lot of pro-lifers, when they come in to do this for the first time, they're expecting that to happen like a couple of times a day, or whatever. And
Right.
it's just like, okay, here's the deal. People don't change their mind right away. We're too prideful to do that. And so it's like just like, if you're a Christian and you met up with a really smart atheist, you sat down at Starbucks with Christopher Hitchens and he gave you all these really smart arguments against Christianity, you're not probably going to be like, wow, I'm an atheist now. No, you're going to go home and you're going to study and call your pastor, research, have any smart Christians like Bill Craig talked about this, that kind of thing. And so William Lane Craig, I don't know him. I just hear people call him anyway. And so you're not gonna. So people don't change their mind. That only happens if it's like an eclipse. Like the stars have to align. I think the person has to be really, really open minded.
So
like
you have
we
to
also be.
read your horoscopes before you go out.
Right. That, and they have to be really open-minded. And I think it helps, and people might get mad at this statement. I don't know if this is true or not. I suspect that it's easier for someone to change their mind if they have not had a personal experience with abortion. I just think that. I think, Carrie has talked a lot on the show about how emotion can kind of sometimes, take you a little bit off logic mode, and now you're fighting for it kind of, because, if you're admitting that you're suddenly become pro-life, then what does that mean for you, kind of a thing. And so I think that's probably a fair statement. So that's why it doesn't happen often. I've talked to a lot of people, and we're talking about, 4 people, but then last month it happened again. So I've got 5 now. I got 5. Yay.
And that doesn't make you proud.
Can we get an applause
Can we get
for
an
that?
applause?
Can we get applause?
Yeah. And so So I want to talk about what happened because there's some things that went well that I actually did better than usual and stuff that we've talked about on the show before. So I want to talk about that. But I also want to talk about there's also a couple things that I messed up that like would have helped this conversation greatly, I think, if I had not messed them up. And so we're going to talk about it, and I hope this will help people. And it's not just because it's a cool story, not just because it's going to make us happy, and we're not making fun of anybody, and so it's like, non-controversial. It's just I think it helps to be able to when this happens, when these rare nuggets happen, to analyze, okay, what happened, and I am hoping some of these things will be helpful to other pro-lifers that are talking to pro-choice people. So, and the really cool thing about it happened in front of a board member. Dude, it doesn't get better than that. We had a board member out there, and she watched like the entire thing. She just stood there for this was like an hour and 15-minute conversation.
Yeah, it was a long conversation.
And she just stood there watching. And
mind you, this board member is well trained, has gone through Justice for All training, has done outreach. Is a very, very talented board member at that.
Needless to say, I'm never getting fired as long as he's on this board. Basically,
well,
I'm so happy.
They hear that statement.
I'm so happy.
Wow,
it was really cool.
Liz could say she's never getting fired either.
Well, she doesn't make anything, so I
can't get
she's
fired.
She's free too.
I want to
until she leaves. She's gonna be like, forget this.
All of our fans need to start this Pay Liz campaign.
See,
wow.
So
wait a minute. Equal work, equal pay.
You're not doing equal work, so sorry.
Oh, that's true. I only come.
Grace, maybe the one holding the
paid.
camera. She does get paid, but it's not equal pay. So,
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
I'm just saying.
We have opened a can of
I'm
worms
being so
here.
honest. I'm hoping it
She's
becomes
gonna
it because
cut all of
I
your
think-
good shots.
I think she deserves as much money as I'm making. How about that? Does that fix everything now? Right? She's
well, when she's hired full time like you.
Okay. I just
Let's just move on. Let's just.
That's a good point. Good point. Office politics.
So we're gonna call. I don't know that this woman would have a problem with me using her real name, but since I didn't ask, we're gonna call her Jennifer.
Okay.
Not her real name. And she seemed confused. So we set up a couple of panels of the Justice for All exhibit out there. We had brochures, and we had a poll table out there. And she seemed really confused because she was like saying, I think it's wrong to have an abortion after 4 weeks LNP, but then
LMP meaning
last menstrual period. That's the way most doctors. So that would be like a 6-week embryo. But then at the same time, like her friend had just had an abortion at 5 weeks LMP, and she didn't have a problem with it. So she seemed kind of confused from the get-go.
Conflicted kind of thing.
Seemed kind of conflicted, or no, I think like more than conflicted, just really confused. I mean, I think that's the best word to describe. Okay. And then it kind of came apparent because I asked her what states she thinks we should make abortion illegal, and she kind of flip-flopped because she was like, well, I'm not for any abortions, but then she was like, but if they need an abortion, they should have one. So it's kind of like, so she seemed confused. I ended up trotting out 5 toddlers by my count. I might have done more, but it was a lot of trotting out
Josh
toddlers.
employed what we in the pro-life work call trotting out a preschool.
That's a small preschool.
I guess like a church, like a church ministry. My little church's preschool. It was like, that's really good. And she would say things like, I would try a toddler, and she would say something like, well, the toddler's different because the toddler is in the world.
Okay.
And I was like,
that's actually very common, the sign of a weird statement.
Right.
But the question we ask is,
you don't think unborn children are in the world? Where are they?
Well, they're in the woman.
She's like, all right, well, but it was a woman in the world. I mean, we can,
right.
So she was like, okay, that's fine. She says, well, but the child is walking and talking. And I was really proud of myself. I like this child, the toddler. I was like, okay, my son Noah, 2 years old now, he's obviously a late talker. He's walking but not talking. So is he like half human because he's doing one but not the other?
Are you calling your son a zombie?
Well, no, I was just this is a total real example.
Yeah, no,
and when we can do that,
example.
I think that's good. And then she's like, well, a toddler has experiences. I pointed at our board member and said, because who is older than both, of us? We'll just say that. And I said, she has more experiences than both of us. Should she have more of a right to life? She's like, no, I don't. That doesn't make a mistake. And we get to my first mistake. At one point, I finally realized that when we were talking about the word value, like as in human value,
right,
we were not talking about the same thing. I was talking about intrinsic value, So like, we all have, we are intrinsically valuable. We're made, whether you believe in the image of God or you just believe we're all valuable,
right, we're
whatever.
equal value no matter what.
I bet she was talking about contributory value.
Instrumental value. Yeah, same thing.
What you can give to society, what you're worth to other people.
Exactly. Because you can be more instrumentally valuable to society.
Right. A doctor is more instrumentally valuable to society than a convict.
Right. I'm more valuable to this podcast than my son is, who's doing nothing for it, kind of a thing.
But
right?
Noah's that's cuter.
But we have the equal true, very true. But we both have the equal right to life because we're both intrinsically valuable at the equal. So if
the key distinction.
If I had understand that a long time ago, like this conversation would have gone better. Because basically when you do that, when you're both talking about different things using the same word, then it's like you're not actually making the right connection. So I hadn't asked enough questions to make sure I understood what you were talking about.
Well, that's one of the things that we talk about on the podcast a lot. And if you go through any kind of pro-life training, like Justice for All, like we promote here on the podcast, one of the important things is to remember what your definitions are. I mean, we always say it comes down to one question.
Right.
And our listeners and our viewers know it's what is it?
Right.
What is
the
unborn? Parents, what is the unborn? What the underlying is, what is the definition of human life? Or what is the definition of an unborn fetus? What does that mean?
Right.
And so in your case, that was you're committing the problem, the fallacy, conversational fallacy of not knowing what your listeners.
How did you discover that you were talking about different?
I finally asked her because finally she used the term value in a sentence and was like, "Whoa, okay, hold on, let's just make sure we're using." I said we're using a word. I by that point I had a pretty good idea that what was going on. So then I asked clarification questions to make sure. I said, when you say value, do you mean like this is what I mean? I said I mean what we say intrinsically valuable. Explain what that means. Then I said some people mean instrumentally valuable, and this is what that means. I'm not trying to just throw out big words. I explained what those terms meant. So he was like, no, I'm talking about the latter. I was like, okay, I'm talking about the former. So here's, so we figured that out. My second mistake was.
But how did you get out of that though?
I just explained this is what I mean, and she was like, okay.
But after that, when you discovered you were talking about different things, how did you proceed with the conversation? Did you talk about her definition of value?
No, we went with my definition. I just made sure this when I say value, this is what I wanted her to understand what I actually mean when I say
and
stuff.
So
we didn't have a debate about it.
But she took that on board as an acceptable ramification to your discussion, or an acceptable component, which is we are no longer talking about instrumental value. We are talking about intrinsic value.
Yes.
She took that on board.
She seemed to be fine with that, and we just moved on. If I'm remembering right.
But in a different situation, you may have had to go on and talk about what happens with, and you probably would have trotted out toddlers for instrumental value to decide, is that how we want to judge human value?
She seemed fine with talking about intrinsic value, and that made sense to her. So we kind of switched.
That's
tracks.
good. That's good.
The other thing was at one point, and I've got the Justice for All brochure that we have out there, and one of the panels that we had out there was the fetal development slide, and so
my favorite panel.
It was the best panel.
Yes.
And so we had that out there, and at one point, because it asked at the top, it says, "When are we human?" And I had asked her, which ones do you think are human? And she said all of them. She said they're all human.
Right. Correct answer.
Right, which is that's true. And I took that because and this was not as much my fault as the last thing, because she really sounded definitive when she said they're all human. But she wasn't meaning to make an absolute statement that they're actually all human. What she actually meant was that she personally believes they're all human. But other people don't think that they're all human. And so who is she to say, tell someone else?
Okay.
And it was like 45 minutes into the conversation before I realized that's what she meant at the beginning of the conversation. It was just, that's bad. That's one more thing. Like, maybe this conversation would not have gone 75 minutes if I had,
So to her, when you asked, are these human? You were like asking, do you like chocolate ice cream?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Or is chocolate ice cream good?
To me, they're all human.
Yeah. So
I think they're all human, but so what?
So,
kind of thing.
Like happens in conversations, a lot of times people say things and don't clarify that they mean that.
Right.
And that I can see how that would have gotten you into some trouble as you tried to use that.
In your defense of making the mistake, so to speak,